Yo, what's up guys? We are back, and today is day one of the Project Majora build. Now, for those of y'all who are unaware of what that is, my boy SHADOWBLACK is going to be doing a playthrough of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. I'm actually going to be sending him my copy of the game to play because he doesn't have a copy of the game. But I decided to go a little bit further than that. I just want to be very clear. I was not asked to do this, nor was I paid to do this. This was just something I decided to do because I wanted to fucking do it. So, all disclaimers aside, I decided to go the extra mile, and I'm actually going to be building a custom N64 controller for him to use during his playthrough. So, this is day one. I got my scrap N64 parts in this bag here, just lying around. We're gonna check that out in a second. But the first thing I wanted to do with the controller was replace the analog stick, because if I grab this other N64 controller that I just have lying around, the analog sticks on these are notoriously terrible, and especially for doing live streams where you're going to be live streaming and using this analog stick for a long period of time. It becomes very uncomfortable very quickly. I've learned that from personal experience, and so the first thing I wanted to do is, replace that analog stick. Now, initially, the plan was to get an Xbox One Pro controller. There's a guy in New Orleans that I know that has like 3 or 4 of them that are just scrapped for parts. So I was gonna go see him and see if I can work a deal to get one of those analog sticks and then solder that in. But there were some concerns. One, if I would actually be able to fit the analog stick in there. And two, that would require me driving all the way to New Orleans, which is a very long drive, and for the time constraints that I have on this video, I decided not to do it. If we ever revisit this concept, then maybe at another time we could try something like that. But I decided to go for an alternative. So after doing a couple hours of research, I came across this. Now, in this box is a very special little device here that I am actually very excited to try out. This is actually a GameCube inspired analog stick. It's not 100% a GameCube analog stick, but it's GameCube inspired. But it's already got the mounting hardware and the wiring for an N64 controller. So theoretically, I just take apart the controller, pull the original analog stick out, because it's actually on a connector. It's not soldered into the board, which means it's modular. You can just unplug it. Then I plug this thing in, put it all back together, and it should work. But if you look at this, it's a little bit shorter than the N64 analog stick, but it's much more like a GameCube analog stick. It's even got like the little notches up top. This thing hit me for about 12 bucks on Amazon, and we're gonna be installing this first. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this big old pile of parts and see if I can get a somewhat working controller together with this new analog stick. And then we're going to test it out to see if this analog stick works. And if it does, then we can move forward from there. Alright, here we are, and I got my trusty screwdriver here, Now, we do want to be careful with everything that's going on in here because this is some very old wiring. Whenever you see a brown PCB like that, you know you're dealing with some old shit. Especially if it's a one-sided PCB. Like, look at this. It's not even... They got stuff going through the PCB over to the other side. Doing dual-sided PCBs is more expensive, so that might have just been a cost-saving measure. But they actually have stuff going through the PCB, like this wire here that goes to the Z button. There's actually a cutout in the PCB that it's fed through and then soldered on the other side. So that's probably a cost-saving measure they used for that. But let's go ahead and get out this analog stick. Now, one thing I absolutely love about this controller, because for those of y'all who don't know, I used to make a bunch of custom 360 controllers. That was a hobby of mine for a while. That was before I had the YouTube channel, but the thing that I love about the N64 controller, especially coming from Nintendo, is that it doesn't have any proprietary screws, which is great for getting it apart. A lot of Nintendo stuff uses tri-wing screws, which is a proprietary screw that Nintendo uses. And then even the Xbox stuff. I'm not sure about the new Xbox stuff, but I know that the 360 controllers use a T8 security pin screw. So you have to have a special screwdriver for those. And it's actually a good thing this thing does not use tri-wing, because I actually lost my tri-wing screwdriver. I don't know where it is, so I'd have to find it. But okay, so we've gotten the analog stick free. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna lift very carefully this little pad right here is actually the contact for the Z button. We're gonna lift that out of that groove very carefully, because if not, we'll actually end up pulling it from the board. And then we're gonna lift this analog stick up, just like that, up and out, and then we're gonna try to unplug it without damaging this header, hopefully. I don't think this analog stick has ever been unplugged, so it might be a little stiff. Ideally, we want to do this without breaking the analog stick, but honestly, if we break it, it doesn't matter because we have a replacement. Just so long as we don't break the actual board, we're fine. So there we go. We got it out. There we are. Okay, so here is the original analog stick for the N64, and if you actually look, there's a big spring underneath there that when it's bolted to the controller, that spring clamps down, and then you have your analog stick. Now, I believe the reason for this, which I may be wrong, but I believe the reason for that spring was to create resistance, and then they had a tensiometer in there. I don't know if that's the proper term, but they had basically something in there that would measure resistance along that spring, and when you would move the analog stick, it would press on certain parts of the spring. I think that's my theory as to why that's built the way it is. I don't actually know for a fact, but either way, it doesn't matter because we're done with this analog stick, and we're moving on to this analog stick, which, as you can see, it is the same mounting hardware, but this one doesn't have that spring because it doesn't need it. This is a more modern analog stick, so we're just gonna drop that right in here. There we go. Plug it in. I actually think this connector might be backwards. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to fit. Let's try lifting the whole motherboard out. Yeah, that's definitely the way it's meant to go in. Does it not have the right number of pins? Are the pins bent? The new plug does have slightly different grooves, but that shouldn't be an issue. You just don't want to accidentally break something. And that is very concerning. There it is! There it is! I think I got it. There it is. Okay, we got it. We got it. Okay. Okay, we got it plugged in. I don't know why it randomly decided to work that time, but not the 12 other times. Now, on the underneath here, we actually have these pads that when you press the buttons, it creates a circuit on the board completes a circuit to register an input. This is actually pretty standard with what you would see in even modern day controllers. Maybe not necessarily all of them, but I know the 360 used pretty much the same thing. I am going to replace these pads though, because these pads are really old. So I am going to get brand new ones online. I've already ordered them, they just haven't come in yet. So we're still going to use the original button caps underneath there. But the actual button mechanisms themselves will be brand new.
2 very boring minutes later.
So we have the analog stick in. It actually looks really nice. We're gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut to when I have this put together and we can test it. So I'll see you guys in a minute. Alright, so we're back. I got the controller back together. We got our new analog stick in there. I did not put all of the screws back in. I only put 3, which should be enough for us to test everything, because I am gonna have to take this controller back apart. I just want to make sure this analog stick is working. Smash Bros will give me a good idea as to whether or not this analog is working properly, which I can say so far on the menu it seems good. But once we actually get into some fights, I'll know for sure. Let's just go ahead and go into training mode. I feel like it's a good way to do that. This is actually very responsive analog. This was $12. This is really nice. I might buy another one of these for my controller. But yeah, that is very responsive. So we're gonna go ahead and just hop in Samus here. There we go. We'll go ahead and try some other buttons just to make sure those all still work. So here we are. D-pad, let's see. I don't think D-pad actually does anything when you're fighting, so that should be standard. Start works. Let's see. C button works. Yeah, everything seems to be working. This analog is very responsive, very nice. And overall, everything seems to be working as it should. I don't notice any glaring issues. When we're actually done with the build, I'll do another test before I send it off just to be absolutely sure. But as of right now, I do not see any glaring issues with the controller. Everything seems as it should. I do want to go ahead and leave this mode just to see if the D-pad is working, and yes, the D-pad is working. Okay. So everything on the controller works. The new analog works well. So now we're gonna have to move on to the next step. I'm gonna have to take this back apart because there's still some stuff I want to do on the inside. I want to clean up the contacts a little bit. I'm supposed to be getting some new pads for all the buttons. The button caps are still gonna be the original button caps, but the mechanisms for them, the pads underneath, are all gonna be brand new. So essentially you're gonna have a new set of buttons on here. And yeah, so the next step is gonna be taking it apart, getting those pads, and while it's apart, I'm actually going to paint it as well. I already have an idea for what I would like to do as far as painting it. But there we go. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take this back apart and we'll move on to the next part of this process. So here we are in the garage, and we have the top half to our N64 controller here. We do not have the bottom half yet, because I'm actually going to be doing the bottom half in a different color, which I do not have yet. But we have our top half here, and what we're going to want to do before we start painting this is we're going to want to sand it down.
Now, this is a very important step in the painting process, because if we were to not sand this and just go ahead and paint it, there's a high likelihood that that paint would later chip and kind of fall off. So sanding it will give us a nice grip for the paint to adhere to. Now, we don't necessarily have to sand off all of the original paint. We just have to make sure that there's a nice, even grit for the new paint to adhere to. Now, I did some looking around, and I was able to find this 1500 grit sandpaper. This is really old, but this is actually meant for water sanding, which will be perfect for getting just the right amount of sanding on this, because if you don't sand it at all, or if you don't sand it enough, the paint has a high likelihood it's going to chip, it's going to crack, and then it's going to fall off. But if you sand it too much, if you have a higher grit sandpaper, like let's see, like this for example, then you're going to actually damage the material that you are trying to paint, and the overall finish won't come out nice. So we're gonna go with a 1500 grit sandpaper, because that's just what I have to, that's just what I happen to have offhand. Ideally, we would actually want to go even higher than that, potentially 2000 or 250. But this is just what I happen to have offhand, so we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna spend a couple minutes sanding this down, and then we'll be ready for paint. Okay, so we're about 15 minutes later, and I would say this is adequately sanded. I know it probably won't show up well in the video, but just feeling it with my thumb, just, yeah, you can feel that it's definitely been sanded. But the important part is that you can't see really any of that sanding very clearly, which is good. If you see all the visible scratches very easily, then you probably used too high of a grit sandpaper, and you probably should have used something a bit lighter. So we should be just about good. There is a little bit of grime that's collected in some of these indents. So before we start painting, I'm gonna see if I can find a toothpick and just kind of get some of that out, because we don't want any of that in there while we're painting, because it'll get stuck in the paint and it won't be good. So I'm gonna just kind of go over it with a fine toothpick and just try to get some of that out there, and then we'll be ready to start painting this piece. Alright, we're back, and using an old toothbrush and some toothpicks, I was able to get all of that grime out of these grooves that had accumulated over the years. We're all properly sanded down and ready for paint. Now, normally if I'm painting something, I would go ahead and do it outside. However, there has been some concern that it's going to rain, so what I've decided to do is I'm going to hang the controller shell from this chain on the inside of the door here. I'm going to paint it while it's hung up, and then I'm going to close the door to allow it to dry while it's on the inside here, so if it rains, it won't ruin the paint. We are going to have to paint multiple times, and we're going to be using a variety of different colors for this. So that being said, let's go ahead and hang this up here. So now we have the controller hung up, we have our paint. Let me just grab that there. And oh, we're turning a little bit. Let's hold that there. That's gonna be a little bit of a concern while we're painting, but we'll try to make the best with what we have. Okay, so we have our paint. I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum gloss enamel, and we're gonna be using sail blue today. We're gonna go for kind of a Hylian shield theme here, I'm thinking. I think that would be pretty cool. So if we can just get this to stay still long enough for us to put our first coat on here, that would be great. Let's go ahead and let me just, yep, okay, that's working. Doesn't really matter if we get paint on this door. I'm not really concerned about that. I am concerned about the wind blowing this around as I'm trying to paint it though. That's a little bit of a concern of mine. Okay, that should be, let's just go ahead and go for it, huh? Oh, nope, that's not happening. Hold on, you need to stay still. This might not work, because I can't have it flipping around like that when I'm trying to paint it. This wind just came out of nowhere, had to go and ruin this for us. Alright, here we go, come on. Let's see here. Nope, that is not okay. Let's see here. Alright. There we go. Nope, you need to flip back around. Yeah, see, that's a problem. It's moving around as I'm trying to paint it. That paint does look really nice, though. Let's see. We'll be right back. Alright, it is now a couple days after the last clip. We are now 3 coats of paint on this. There's a little bit of minor inconsistencies with the paint there that I'm hoping I can cover up. But overall, it's pretty good. I'm pretty confident once we get our clear coat on here that we hopefully won't have any issues with any paint chipping off. But now, I've just had my new paints delivered. I was waiting on these to come in. And we're gonna go ahead and get started with these now, because there's still a little something I plan to do with this. I am very happy with how this came out. I wasn't quite sure about it at first, but overall, I think it looks pretty good. The important thing is, does it play really good? And we'll find that out tomorrow.
Alright, it is now day 4. We have our beautiful custom painted N64 controller top shell. Now, originally I had intended to paint the bottom shell as well. However, I decided against this because I actually had lying around an original gold shell, which actually matches the cartridge of the game. So I thought, you know, gold would be a nice color. So you got like the Hylian shield on top, and then you just have the, like the Zelda gold on the bottom. And I thought that would look very nice together. And if you actually just loosely put these together here, I think it gets the point across very well. Of course, the green screen is making this a little hard to visualize. So actually, you know what? We'll go ahead and turn this green screen off for now. Let's see. There we go. There we go. Sorry to break the illusion for everybody, but I feel like this does really look nice. I think that is a nice little job there. You can see it is very glossy. There are some minor imperfections in the paint, but overall I think it came out very nice. And I cannot wait to see SHADOWBLACK's reaction to this thing when he sees it. Because he knows about the controller, but he has no clue what I've done to it or what it looks like. So it's going to be fun to see that. But that is a beautiful controller. One of a kind, the only one on the planet. And I actually want to do something very special with this before we put it back together. Because there's a good chance once we put it back together, we're not taking it apart again. I am going to sign this controller. I'm not going to sign the outside, because let's be honest, that's beautiful. I'm going to sign the inside of the controller. So I'm going to sign right up here. There we go. And I'll go ahead and sign this piece as well, so we know that it goes with it. There we go. And I might sign the motherboard. Actually, yeah, I can sign the motherboard because it is a one-sided motherboard, which means that I can actually write on the back of the motherboard and it won't affect the function of it at all. So I'll go ahead and sign the motherboard as well. That way, if either me or SHADOWBLACK ever becomes super famous, we'll be able to identify that all of these parts were in fact in this controller that I built. And now that we've done that, it's time to put this together. I just wanted to do that because I thought it would be a cool way to commemorate it. But anyway, that being said, we have to put this thing together now, which these can be a bit of a pain. I'm going to set this motherboard down here, which is probably not a good idea, but we're going to do it. These can be a bit of a pain. I do have the new membrane switches in now. I was waiting for these to be delivered, and it took a lot longer than it should have for them to be delivered. But I do have them here. Am I missing one? Hold on. Is there one on the back of this thumbstick? There is not. I am missing one, I think. Let me double check. No, I got all of them. Okay. So, these are the brand new membrane switches that I've gotten. They're more or less exactly the same as the original ones. These are just new, instead of having, like, I don't know, 20 years of use on them. These ones are brand new. So, in theory, the buttons in this controller are brand new now. Because that's how that works. I also already went ahead and cleaned all of the contacts on the motherboard off camera. So, all of these pressure contacts for these fittings should be properly cleaned now. So basically all of these buttons are gonna work as if they were new, because I've replaced all of those pieces. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by grabbing our nice little painted piece here. Shadow's gonna freak when he sees this controller, I just know it. Again, it didn't come out perfectly, but I mean it was handmade by me. Yeah, so it's not gonna be perfect, but I think it came out pretty damn well. You guys are gonna have to let me know what you think. And I'll definitely be seeing what Shadow thinks of it when he gets it. Okay, well, we're pretty much done here. Go ahead and flip this baby over. Now, I myself have not seen what the front of this controller looks like yet with the buttons in, so I'm about to look at it myself for the first time. Ooh, that looks nice. That looks nice. And all of the buttons feel good. Do they still work? I have no clue. We're gonna find out in a minute here, but they all feel very nice. And the thumbstick. Oh, this thumbstick is buttery smooth. That is a good stick right there. Oh my god, that is buttery smooth. Alright, well, we got the controller together. So, all we have to do now is test it to make sure that everything still works. But there is the controller. There's the front, looking nice. There's the back, all gold. Because this is the original shell on the back that I did not repaint, there are a few scuffs and scratches. But overall, for being as old as it is, it doesn't look that bad. Alright, so what exactly did I do to this controller? Well, obviously I painted it. That's obvious. I replaced the thumbstick, because the original thumbstick, which I actually have up here somewhere. I can't seem to find it at this moment. There it is. Okay. So, I took out the original thumbstick, because we all know that these original thumbsticks are very primitive technology, and they are very prone to failure. In fact, if you just look at this one, I can wave it around and that thumbstick goes all over the place. You know, this thumbstick, it's pretty much used up. So I took out the original thumbstick for this controller, and I put in what is essentially a GameCube thumbstick, more or less. Because the GameCube thumbsticks are a lot more comfortable, they're a lot more responsive, and overall it does its job very well. It is buttery smooth. But on top of that, I also painted the controller, obviously, and then I replaced all of the membrane switches within the controller with brand new ones. So, this is essentially a brand new controller that not only looks amazing, and not only plays as if it were brand new, but actually plays better than the day it was new, because now you have this nice, tasty thumbstick on there. So overall, I feel like I've done as much as I can with this controller. So after we test it, it'll be time to send it on its journey to its new home. Granted, I want to make it very clear, I do expect Shadow to send back the game that I'm sending him. He can keep the controller, but I do expect him to send back the game. You're only borrowing the game, but you can keep the controller. So, I just want to make that very clear, and I'm pretty sure Shadow already knows that, but just in case it wasn't clear, and just in case I have it on record, there we go. Or just so I have it on record. But anyway, I can't get over how damn good this thing looks. I mean, if it weren't for the few little flaws here and there, you would almost think this was like official. Like, I did a pretty damn good job with that, if I do say so myself, despite all of the shortcomings and mistakes that we made along the way. But now is time to test it to see if it actually still works or not, because I have no clue. So what I might do for this next section is, if I don't get lazy, I'll put in some nice B-roll here with one of my new cameras. So we'll see if I actually end up doing that or not, but there we go, the controller is back together, and after everything I've done with this controller, the total cost for me to make this goes up to roughly $46. So this wasn't cheap by any means to do, but for a one-of-a-kind controller, I think it looks pretty nice, and I think it was worth the cost. That being said, we're gonna see if this thing works now. Alright, well, it would appear that this controller has passed all of my testing. Smash 64, Pokemon Snap, and GoldenEye being just a few of the games I've tested it on. Everything seems to be working properly, and it would seem that this controller plays as good as it looks. Overall, I'm very happy with the way this came out, and I hope you guys enjoyed joining me on this journey, making this controller. And I hope that Shadow is completely blown away by this thing. But that being said, all of our B-roll footage for this project was done on this Nyko Coolpix B500. Not sponsored, but you know, just in case anybody was wondering. And yeah, so I think we're pretty much done. I've done pretty much all I can do with this thing, and I am very happy with the way it came out. This analog stick is just buttery smooth. I love it so much. But that being said, if there's anything I've learned from this experience, it would be that GoldenEye has not aged very well at all. And that I am nowhere near as good at Smash 64 as I used to be. Because I used to be really good with Smash 64, and now I can't do shit in it. I've gotten too used to the more modern Smash games. But that being said, very happy with the way this controller came out. I think it looks really good. And yeah, that's about it. So, thank all you guys for watching. And be sure to check out my boy SHADOWBLACK, because he's going to be using this controller on his full playthrough of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. So please do go check that out. That being said, thank all you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, guys. Alright. Buttery smooth.